Local people, important issues. CBS 10 WILM's weekly focus on the Lower Cape Fear region. This is Byline Wilmington with your host, Don Ansell.
Well, with funding levels at risk and other extreme challenges, many are saying that education in America is at a crossroads. In this region, all eyes are on the newly appointed Superintendent of Schools for New Hanover County, Dr. Tim Markley, who joins us for the full half hour on this week's edition of Byline. Dr. Markley, nice to meet you. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Well, do you feel like all eyes are on you?
No, it's been here obviously about a month, and it's been hit the ground running and getting out to the schools and meeting the folks in the community.
But you know there's a lot of focus on you.
Yeah.
Is that an uncomfortable or?
No, it get comfortable with the job.
Yeah.
Anytime you're the new person in the system or in an area, folks want to know what you're going to do.
Do you feel a lot of pressure?
It's a good. When I look at the system, there's a lot of good things here to celebrate, and I want to build on those things that are there. And there are obviously some issues that we got to address, and I'm sure we'll get to those through the course of this.
Yeah, you came from Catawba County.
Yes.
Their school system. You were superintendent for what, 5 years?
Just over 5 years.
Uh-huh. What fueled your career path in education?
Well, I got stationed at Fort Bragg when I was joined the Army because I grew up in Maine, and they got assigned to Fort Bragg. They had an opportunity when I was enlisted to go back to school and finish up my education. And so I took that Green to Gold program and attended University of North Carolina at Pembroke and got a degree in history. And so I started teaching in Cumberland County.
Was that always in your mind to teach?
If you'd asked me graduating high school, I told you I was going to be a lawyer.
Oh.
I'm glad at some point I made that change. But I started teaching in Cumberland County, and I loved it. Went on to the track to be a school principal there, and eventually a superintendent up in New Hampshire, and then came back home.
In New Hampshire. Comparing Catawba County to New Hanover County, how do the school districts differ in size?
Well, Catawba County is 17,500. This one's about 25,000 students. So it's a little bit bigger. Now, it was a lot more, what you would call, I'd say, rural compared to New Hanover. New Hanover, obviously, you've got the Wilmington, the large city. Didn't have that large city in Catawba County. Demographically, about the same.
What about budgets, the difference in budgets?
Proportional, about the same to where the students are. So we had the budget, obviously.
Relative to the number of students?
180 million there, about 240 million here.
And in moving from one school district to another, there's a lot of differences on the surface. This is a big city. There wasn't that in Catawba. Eastern coastal county versus a western mountain culture. Does that affect how you approach the job that you have in front of you?
It does. What I've done the first month I'm here is really getting out to see the schools and see what's different in terms of what's going on in the schools. And when I look at schools here compared to Catawba County, the students are about the same. The big difference I see is technology is it's more spread out in terms of what folks have. Some of our schools, the newer schools, tend to have a little more than some of the others. And even within buildings, the level of technology varies.
It's different than it at Catawba?
Yeah, Catawba County.
It was more.
We're a little further ahead in technology.
Really?
Our county commissioners 4 years ago in Catawba dedicated 1 penny on the sales tax to technology in schools. And that really gave us a jump start in terms of what we were doing. For a conservative county like Catawba County, that was a very progressive thing to do, and it really allowed us to get a jump on technology in the schools.
Who put forward that initiative in Catawba?
Well, we talked to our county commissioners about our technology needs.
The school board?
And to our county commissioners, and I've got to give the county commissioners credit. They were willing to step forward and do that.
Is educating children the same no matter where they are? And there's an extreme example. Let's say New Hanover County as compared to Washington, D.C., which is pretty extreme. Is educating the children the same?
What happens in the classroom in a lot of places can be the same. Where the differences come are the structural levels. North Carolina is different than almost any other state in the union in that it's much more of a state-driven system. 70% of the funding for local schools in North Carolina generally come from the state. Now, when I was in New Hampshire, 70% of my funding was local. And the school boards had taxing authority. Here, school boards don't have taxing authority. We've got to go to the county commissioners for part of our funding, and we have to rely on the state legislature for the rest of our funding.
Which system do you prefer?
I liked what I had in New Hampshire in terms of I could establish my own budgets and had a little more control over what I was getting for revenues. Now, it was a very rural, fiscally conservative area, so we were pretty good stewards of our dollars, and I think that I have enough faith in the folks on the school board and in the system to make those kinds of decisions.
How hard was it for you to make the decision to move?
It was just time. After 5 years in Catawba County, we had raised graduation rates, academic rates were doing well, and I was looking, and it was time for a new challenge. I grew up on the coast in Portland, and Wilmington is a lot like Portland in terms of coastal community. So I was looking for that kind of community, and Wilmington's been great to me in the time I've been here.
It's no secret that the New Hanover County School Board has been sharply divided on many prominent issues, and of course it's not your job to get involved in the political end of things, but and I'm sure you've dealt with this in your career in other districts, how hard is it to deal with opposing sides of a divided board when they're both looking to you for leadership and answers?
When you got a divided board, then you bring your decisions back to what's best for students. If at the end of the day you make decisions that are good for students, then I think the board members will come together and support those decisions. There are going to be times we disagree, and that's simply just part of the
Is your
nature.
role, do you see your role as part sales when you go to the board to sell? If you have a position you would like the board to adopt, to sell that to both sides?
If there's some things that I think need to be done, then it's my job to make that case to both sides of whatever the spectrum is, and to get them to support that decision.
But in a broad sense, and correct me if I'm wrong, the board makes policy and the administration carries out those policies?
Correct.
So how much of an activist do you see your role being when it comes to policy issues?
It really is going to depend on the issue. I mean, my goal has always been, I have two areas that I consider areas that are very important to me. One is technology, making sure that we've got the best technology possible in schools.
Do you think we're behind?
A little bit.
We are.
When I asked our technology person to give me some numbers. We have, example, one technician maintaining 2,500 computers on average. We have the average age of the computers in our system are over 5 years old. So we're
That's
never.
a big challenge, isn't it?
It is. We're never going to be cutting edge. I get that because of the nature of how we fund schools and just the size of us. But I'd like to cut that gap down a little bit more. Because think about it. When kids graduate school today, they're going to be applying for jobs that right now don't exist. When you and I went to high school, cell phones didn't exist. How much technology and jobs are related to that kind of skills that weren't there when you and I were in schools? So our kids are going to have to be able to roll into jobs that they don't even know about yet. And everything you read says that kids are going to have to be much more flexible. They're going to hold more jobs, change jobs much more often than we did. And so we've got to make sure that they're able to do that.
We're going to take a break. We'll come back and more with Dr. Tim Markley, new superintendent of the new Hanover County school system. We come back talking about how education has changed from when he and I were in school, which is a big gap. We'll talk about that when we come back. Stay with us.